Hello and welcome back to Peaky Boardgamer. My name is Aktarakos and today we'll teach you Crossing Oceans, a game designed by Gerdts, another game featuring his popular rondel mechanism. It's a game for 2 to 4 players that takes about an hour and a half to finish. Let's move to the table and see how the game is played. In the game, players are merchant ship owners trying to guide their fleet to economic prosperity. On their turn, players move their pawn in the rondel, performing one of 7 different actions. Players will modernize their fleet by acquiring new steamships from the market. They will build and expand a network of trading posts, load their ships with coal, and then use their ships to produce a profit. As players will be placing newer ships on the board, older ships will become obsolete and will be removed from the game. When the stack of ship tiles depletes, the game's end is triggered. To maximize their victory point yield in scoring, players will have to combine flags from ships they acquire with tokens they'll be placing on their personal board gained from various activities. In the end, the player with the most victory points will become the winner in Crossing Oceans. Start by placing the board in the middle of the table. The board is double-sided, but you may use any of the 2 sides as they're exactly the same. The board depicts 5 ocean regions: North Atlantic, South Atlantic, Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean and the Tasmanian Sea. The board has plenty of free space to place your component supplies. As indicated on the board, create your bank on Asia and the coal supply on Europe. Create a supply of contracts in Africa and the supply of trade tokens green, white and red in South America. Place a supply of coal piers and blue ribbons on North America and the supply of flag tokens next to the board. Separate the ship tiles according to their back illustration and shuffle each stack. All ships of one stack are earlier ships than all ships of the next stack, and so on and so forth. Set aside the 5 starting regions ships and also the ships of stack 0. Then create one big stack of all other ships in order, having the 1 stack on top and the 9 stack in the bottom. Place the entire ship deck on this area on the board and then fill all ship spaces in the ship market, always from left to right. Place the appropriate flag token on every ship as indicated on the ship's tile. Next, take the initial region ships and place them into their corresponding ocean. Each of these tiles indicate on which specific spot they must be placed. This one, for example, must be placed in the spot which is linked to New York. Do the same with all other tiles. If this is a 3 players game, you flip the ship in the South Atlantic facing downwards. This indicates that the entire South Atlantic region will not be used in the game. If this is a 2 players game, you also flip the ship in the Pacific Ocean. In this video, I will set up for 3 players. Then place 1 lantern token on each of these ships that remain facing upwards. These tokens always indicate the oldest ship on each of the regions. Each player takes a personal board, 150 pounds from the supply, a set of wooden components in one of the 4 colors, and also a multicolored flag. You then take all ships of the 0 category and randomly deal 1 to each player. The player keeps this ship in their personal supply and also takes 1 flag corresponding to the ship just dealt. The ships that were not dealt are placed in the docks to the spaces corresponding to their flags. Then you also place the corresponding flag tokens on these ships. All ships depict a year in the top left corner. The player who was dealt the oldest ship will acquire the Catty-Shark ship, placing one of their captains on the tile. Following this ship year order, the next player will place their captain in the Thermopylae ship. The 3rd player places their captain on the Leander ship. And finally, if there were a 4th player, that player would acquire Ariel in Buenos Aires. Every player places another one of their captains in the central area of the rondel, and the game is now ready to start. You're just 1 click away from supporting this channel by subscribing. If you like our videos and haven't done already, I would really appreciate if you did, as this will help the channel grow and enable me to produce more such videos. In the game, players alternate turns, starting with the player who owns the Catty Shark ship, in our case that would be the blue player, and then continuing clockwise until the end of the game is triggered, which is when this stack of ships is depleted. On their turn, players first choose if they're gonna be playing one of their ships on the board or if they will take one of these contract tokens. Then players can choose to spend any number of their contracts in many ways, and finally they choose one action in the rondel and perform it. Then it's the next player's turn. Now let's move a step back and see a player's turn in greater detail. As we said, players first choose if they will be placing one of their ships in the board or if they will simply take one contract and continue with their turn. To place a ship on the board, you must have at least a captain and a ship, as well as a valid space to place it. If you cannot, then you have no other option but to take a contract. When you place your ship, you first choose one of the ocean regions which is in play. So, in our example, a player cannot choose to place a ship in the South Atlantic. Then, if the region has any empty space, then the player can decide to place the ship into any one of these spaces, and finally, you place one coal token from the supply as a starting bonus. The initial ships that depict this symbol are skipper sailing ships and never use coal. As the game progresses, however, regions will not have empty spaces. If you choose a region that has no empty spaces for your placement, then your ship's year must not be older than the year of the oldest ship in that region. In every region there is a lantern token always indicating the oldest ship in the region. If your ship is younger than the ship with the lantern token, then your ship will replace that exact ship. The lantern token will be immediately transferred to the next oldest ship in the region. If there are any coal markers, they will be returned to the supply, and the owner of the old ship returns to that player's supply along with its captain. The returned ship may still be used and placed in another region from its owner. So back to the beginning of this example, I can always place my ship in the North Atlantic region since there is an empty space regardless of my ship's year, but if I want to choose one of the other regions, I can only place it here since my ship is older than the ships with the lantern token in the other two regions. After you choose whether to place a ship or take a contract, if you have any contracts, you can use any number of them in 4 different ways in any combination. You can spend the contract token to gain £20. So I could spend 2 of my contracts to gain 40. You can spend the contract to take a coal cube from the supply and place it onto any one of your ships on the board. I can spend the second contract and take another coal and place it to the same or another of my ships. Important! Ships can never have more than 3 cubes. Also remember that skipper sailing ships never take or use any coal. Also, you can spend the contract to affect your pawn's movement in the rondel. I will explain more about that in a bit. The last option is to spend 2 of your contracts to place a trading post on the board and also a trade token on your personal board. To place a trade post, you must have one available in your play area and then place it onto any port which is currently linked to one of your owned ships and does not have one of your trading posts. In this situation, the blue player has ships which are linked to Hong Kong and Zanzibar. However, Hong Kong already contains one of the player's trading posts, so the only option for the blue player is to place the trading post here in Zanzibar. If there are any other trading houses in the selected port, the player must spend £30 to each owner of these houses. Each port can accommodate only 1 house per player. Then the player takes a trade token of any color from the supply and places it on the corresponding column of their personal board. The player's board consists of 5 columns, 1 for each token type. Each token type is also linked to 1 flag type. You always place your tokens from top to bottom. The top row already has printed tokens. If you must place your token on a space displaying a cost, then you must be able to pay that cost. Otherwise, you cannot place the token. Finally, you can never have more than 5 tokens of the same type. Next, players move their pawn to one of the rondel's action spaces and perform the corresponding action. On your first turn, you can select any rondel space. But in all of your subsequent turns, you must select one of the 3 next rondel spaces, always by moving your pawn clockwise. However, by spending a contract, you can move your pawn onto any rondel space except the space where you started. So, if I started on the ship space, I could spend the contract to move to the other ship space, but not the same ship space. I will now explain all different actions of the rondel, starting with ship's action. With a ship's action, you can buy up to 3 new ships. You buy these ships either from the ship market or from the docks in any combination. To buy the ship, there is a cost which is depicted in the bottom left corner of the tile. Ships in the ship market, however, have an additional cost printed in the ship space. This is the only difference of buying ships from the docks and from the ship market. When you buy a ship, you also gain the flag on that ship which you place in your personal supply. Let's say that I am performing the ship's action and I want to buy 2 ships. I am currently after this type of flags, so I'm gonna buy this ship paying £70 and that ship with another £110. Regardless how many ships you buy with the action, at the end you're gonna add 3 new tiles from the stack into the ship market. This means that the 3 last spaces in the market must become vacant. First, you slide all other ships to the left as much as possible. Then, if you need more spaces, you're gonna start moving ships from the ship market and place them to their corresponding space in the docks. I need another 1 space, so this ship also must move into that area, and if there is another ship there, it is removed from the game. After you have made enough space in the market, start placing new tiles, always from left to right, and then place the corresponding flags on these ships. Towards the end of the game, instead of ships, you will start revealing headquarter tiles. These tiles will never be placed in the regions. However, whenever you gain such a tile, you also collect the token depicted in the bottom right corner. Important exception, the token gained from buying a headquarters tile is free of the additional costs depicted on your personal board. So if I gain this token from headquarters, I will not pay the extra £30. To perform most of the remaining actions, your ships will need coal. Except on spending contracts to gain coal, you can also use the coal action. When you perform the coal action, first you gain a coal pier token from the supply and place it to the next available space. Then you gain coal cubes from the supply, 1 from every coal symbol depicted on your tokens. In our example, 4 cubes. When you place your cubes, you must distribute them among your ships as evenly as possible. So if blue was performing this action and had these ships on the board, they would not be able to add another coal in this ship until all ships had 2 coal. The player has a ship with no coal, so the first coal must go there. The next coal can go either in this ship or that ship. The third coal again must go to this ship, and the fourth coal can go to any of the 3 ships. Very important, even distribution applies only to the coal action. When you spend a contract to gain 1 coal, you can place it in any of your ships. Remember, the maximum amount is 3 coal. With the fleet action, all of your ships that have at least 1 coal lose 1 coal and generate their income. Income of ships is depicted in the top right corner of the tile. You cannot choose not to generate income. If the ship has coal, it will use it. Important! Skipper ships that do not require coal generate their income without having to spend one. In this example, my ships will generate £90 income. With the cargo action, player chooses one of their ships that has at least one coal. One coal is then discarded and then the ship generates income based on its tonnage. Tonnage is depicted in the bottom right corner of the tile. Player gains £10 for every 1,000 tonnage. So if I choose this ship for my cargo action, I will discard one coal and gain £80. Next action is region. Here the player chooses one of the regions and all players that have ships with at least one coal in the region will generate those ships' income. Again, no player can choose not to use coal on their ships. Ships that have coal will discard one cube and will generate income for their owners. Now the green player has selected this region for the region action and gained £70 for green ships in that region that had coal. The red player would also collect £30, but unfortunately the ship had no coal to spend. With the blue ribbon action, the player gets one blue ribbon token from the supply to place it on their personal board like the rest of the tokens. However, to be eligible to take the token, the player must own the ship that has the highest speed in the North Atlantic region, and that ship must also have a coal cube to spend. Speed is depicted in this area of the token. If the player ties with another player, then the active player can break the tie to their favor if the ship has 2 coal cubes to spend. As an extra bonus, the winning ship generates double its income. So here the blue player with this ship ties in speed with the green player's ship. The blue player spent 2 cubes and gains the blue ribbons token and also £120. The last action is house. With this action, a player adds a trading house to a port currently connected to one of their ships and gains 1 trade token to add to their personal board. Remember that the player must give £30 to each other player that already has a house in that port. The only difference with discarding 2 contracts to add the house is that with the rondel action, if the ship connected to the new trading house has coal, it spends 1 cube and also generates its income. The game's end is triggered when at the end of a ship's action, the stack of ship tiles depletes. At this point, place 3 coal cubes next to the pawn of the player who owns the cutty shark and continue playing. At the beginning of this player's turn, remove one of these cubes. And if there are no cubes to remove, stop playing and move on to scoring. In scoring, you first convert your remaining contracts and remaining coal on your ships at a 1:20 ratio. So, I convert these 5 pieces into £100. Then you convert your remaining cash into victory points at a 100:1 ratio. With £220, I gain 2 victory points. Next, each player gains 3 victory points for each one of their captains and trading houses on the board. The main source of victory points is from flags and tokens collected during the game. The player multiplies the number of flags to the level reached with the corresponding tokens. For the first category, the player has reached the level of 3 victory points, multiplied by 2 flags, 6 victory points. In the second category, the player gains 4 times 10 victory points, 40 victory points. For the next 2 categories, the player has gained some tokens, but unfortunately has no flags, so the player gains 0 points for these 2 categories. Finally, the player gains 3 times 9 victory points, 27 points from red trade tokens. Every multicolored flag grants victory points equal to the different types of flags you have acquired. In this example, the player has acquired 3 different types of flags, so 2 times 3, 6 victory points from the multicolored flags. The player with the most victory points wins the game. If there is a tie, then the tied player who owns the youngest ship wins the tie. Before ending this video, I would like to make a couple of clarifications about placing tokens. If you take a specific token and you have no empty spaces to place it, then instead you take a token of the type you have the least. And if you tie for the least tokens, you can choose any one you wish. So I could take a green token instead, and again I would have to pay this penalty of £30. Now, when you build a new trading house, as we said, you can take any one of the 3 trade tokens. However, you must choose one of the types for which you have a vacant space in order to place them. So you cannot choose the red trading token and say, oh, I have no empty space, and get a token of the type I have the least and gain a blue ribbon. I would have to take either the green or the white one. But if you gained a headquarters that specifically granted you a red trade token, then in this case you would take a blue ribbon token. Remember that placement of tokens that come from a headquarters tile is always free of placement penalties. And that were all the rules of crossing oceans. And if you like our videos and want to see more, please subscribe to our channel. Until next time, have fun and play more board games.